business or some other means, and he then gets the money. He enjoys the senses to his satisfaction. By enjoying the senses, one becomes fat. Therefore, in spiritual advancement, becoming is not at all satisfactory. Yeah, there it is. This is a message to all the fat people in the world. Text 18. O Brahmana, fully in knowledge of transcendence, you have nothing to do, and therefore you are lying down. It is also understood that you have no money for sense enjoyment. How then has your body become so fat? Under circumstances, if you do not consider my question impotent, kindly explain how this has happened. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Generally, those engaged in spiritual advancement take food only once, either in the afternoon or in the evening. If one takes food only once, naturally, he does not become fat. The learned sage, however, was quite fat. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj was very much surprised because of being experienced in self realization. A transcendentalist certainly becomes bright faced, and one who is advanced in self realization must be considered to possess the body of a Brahmana, because the bright faced saintly person was lying down and not working and yet was quite fat. Prahlad Maharaja was puzzled and wanted to question him about this. Text 19. Your honor appears limited, expert, and intelligent in every way. You can speak very well, saying things that are pleasing to the ear, to the heart. You see that people in general are engaged in fruitive activities, yet you are lying here inactive. Purport. Prahlad Maharaj studied the bodily features of the saintly person, and through the saint's physiognomy, the physiognomy, Prahlad Maharaj could understand that he was intelligent and expert. Although he was lying down and not doing anything, Prahlad was naturally inquisitive about why he was lying there inactive. Text 20. Sri, okay. Narada Muni continued. When the saintly person was thus questioned by Prahlada Maharaj, the king of the Daityas, he was captivated by this shower of nectarian words, and he replied to the inquisitiveness of Prahlada Maharaj with a smiling face. The saintly Brahmana said, O best of the Asuras, Prahlada Maharaj, who are recognized by advanced civilized men, you are aware of the different stages of life because of your inherent transcendental eyes, with which you can see a man's character and thus know clearly the results of acceptance and rejection of things as they are. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A pure devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can understand the minds of others because of his pure vision in devotional service. A devotee like Prahlad Maharaj can study another man's character without difficulty. Text 22. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences, is predominant within the core of your heart because of your being a pure devotee. He always he always drives away all the darkness of ignorance, as the sun drives away the darkness of the universe. The words Bhaktya Kevalaya indicate that simply by executing devotional service, one can become full of all knowledge. Krishna is the master of all knowledge. Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashasa striya. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hridaya Vijnanastati. And when the Lord is pleased with a devotee, the Lord instructs him. Only to the devotees, however, does the Lord give instructions by which to advance further and further in devotional service. To others, the non-devotees, the Lord gives instructions according to the manner of their surrender. The pure devotee is described by the words Bhaktya Kevalaya. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura explains that Bhaktya Kevalaya means Jnana Karmadi Amishraya, unmixed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. Oh, well, that's very good. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment and awareness. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment and awareness. Okay. Text number 23. My dear King, although you know everything, you have posed some questions, which I shall try to answer according to what I have learned by hearing from authorities. I cannot remain silent in this regard, for a personality like you is just fit to be spoken to by one who desires self purification. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A saintly person doesn't wish to speak to anyone and everyone, and he is therefore grave and silent. Generally, a common man does not need to be advised unless one is prepared to take instructions. It is said that a saintly person should not address him, although sometimes, because of great kindness, a saintly person speaks to ordinary men. As for Prahlada Maharaja, however, since he was not a common ordinary man, whatever questions he posed would have to be answered, even by a great and exalted personality. Therefore, the saintly Brahmana did not remain silent, but began to answer. These answers, however, were not concocted by him. This is indicated by the words yata shrutam, meaning, as I have heard from the authorities. In the Parampara system, when the questions are bona fide, the answers are bona fide. No one should attempt to create or manufacture answers. One must refer to the Shastras and give answers according to Vedic understanding. Okay. The words yata, shrutam refer to Vedic knowledge. The Vedas are known as Shruti because this knowledge is received from authority. The statements of the Vedas are known as Shruti Pramana. One should quote evidence from the Shruti, the Vedas or Vedic knowledge, and then one's statements will be correct. Otherwise, one's words will proceed from mental concoction. Text 24. Because of insatiable material desires, I was being carried away by the waves of material nature's laws. And thus, I was engaging in different activities, struggling for existence in various forms of life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As long as the living entity wants to fulfill various types of material desire, he must continuously change from one body to accept another. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur explains that as a small piece of grass falls in a river and is tossed about with different types of wood and tree branches, the living entity floats in the ocean of material existence and is dashed and tossed amidst material conditions. This is called struggle for existence. One kind of fruitive activity causes the living being to take one form of body, and because of actions performed in that body, another body is created. One must therefore stop these material activities, and the chance to do so is given in the human form of life. Specifically, our energy to act should be engaged in the service of the Lord, for then materialistic activities will automatically stop. One must fulfill one's desires by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord, for he knows how to fulfill them. Even though one may have material desires, one should therefore engage in the devotional service of the Lord that will purify one's struggle for existence. Akama sarvakama va mokshakama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajita purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Anya vilasita sunyam jnana karmadhyana vratam anakulyena krishnana silanam bhaktir uttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. One that is called pure devotional service. Bhakti Rasamsrita Sindhu 1.1.11. Text 25. In the course of the evolutionary process, which is caused by fruitive activities due to undesirable material sense gratification, I have received this human form of life, which can lead to the heavenly planets, to liberation, to the lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. Okay, so uh, one can receive a human form of life, which can lead to the heavenly planets, or to liberation, or to lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. Okay. Among all living entities within this material world all living entities within this material world are undergoing the cycle of birth and death according to the laws of nature. This struggle of birth and death is different. Uh, Birth and death in different species may be called the evolutionary process, but in the Western world, it has been wrongly explained. Darwin's theory of evolution from animal to man is incomplete because the theory does not present the reverse condition, mainly evolution from man to animal. It only explains going from the low class to high class, but it doesn't explain the high class coming back to the low class. Namely, evolution from man to animal. In this verse, however, evolution has been very well explained on the strength of Vedic authority. Human life, which is obtained in the course of the evolutionary process, is a chance for elevation, swarga pavarga. I'm sorry, swarga, yeah, pravarga, or for degradation, uh, tirasam, tiras, tiraskam punar ashucha. If one uses his human form of life properly, he can elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, where material happiness is many thousands of times better than on this planet. Or one may cultivate knowledge by which to become free from the evolutionary process and be reinstated in one's original spiritual life. This is called apavarga or liberation. Material life is called pavarga because uh, because here we are subject to five different states of suffering, represented by the letters pa, paha, ba, baha, and ma. Pa means parishrama, very hard labor. Pa means vena, or foam from the mouth. For example, sometimes we see a horse foaming at the mouth with heavy labor. Ba means vyartaha, disappointment. In spite of so much hard labor, at the end we find disappointment. Baha means maya or fear. In material life, one is always in the blazing fire of fear, since no one knows what will happen next. Finally, ma means mrityu or death. When one attempts to nullify these five different statuses of life, pa, pa, Ba, Ba, and Ma. One achieves apavarga, or liberation from the punishment of material existence. The word tiraskam refers to degraded life. Human life, of course, provides an opportunity for the best living conditions. As Western people think, from the monkeys come the human. Okay, as Western people think, from the monkeys come human beings who are more comfortably situated. However, if one does not utilize his human life for swarga or apavarga, he falls again to the degraded life of animals like dogs and hogs. Therefore, a sane human being must consider whether he will elevate himself to the higher planets, prepare to free himself from the evolutionary process, or travel again through the evolutionary process in higher and lower grades of life. If one works piously, one may be elevated to the higher planetary systems or achieve liberation and return home back to Godhead. But otherwise, one may be degraded to a life as a dog, a hog, and so on. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.25, Yanti Deva Ratha Devan. Those interested in being elevated to the higher planetary systems, Devaloka or Swargaloka, must prepare to do so. Similarly, if one wants liberation and wants to return home back to Godhead, he should prepare himself for that purpose. Our Krishna consciousness movement. I always like the way Prabhupada write our. It always includes us.
Yes.
Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore the highest movement for the benediction of human society because this movement is teaching people how to go back home, back to Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 13.22, it is clearly stated that different forms of life are obtained by association with the three modes of material nature. Karanam sango sya sadasad yoni janmasu. According to one's association with the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance in this life, in one's next life, one receives an appropriate body. Modern civilization does not know that because of varied association in material nature, the living entity, although eternal, is placed in different diseased conditions known as the many species of life. Modern civilization is unaware of the laws of nature. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartaham ikimanyate. The bewildered spiritual soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the performer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Every living entity is under the full control of the stringent laws of material nature. But rascals think themselves independent. Actually, however, they cannot be independent. This is foolishness. A foolish civilization is extremely risky. And therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to make people aware of their full dependent condition. Under the stringent laws of nature, and is trying to save them from being victimized by strong Maya, which is Krishna's external energy. Behind that material, behind the material laws is the supreme control of Krishna. Maya dakshena prakriti suyatesa characharam. Therefore, if one surrenders unto Krishna, mam evaye prapadyante mayametam prampude, one may immediately be freed from the control of external nature. Sagunam samatityayitam brahmabhuyaya kalpate. This should be the aim of life. Well, that's wonderful. Now you're getting all the verses that help us understand what is the real purpose of life. In this human form of life, men and women unite for the sensual pleasure of sex. But by actual experience, we have observed that none of them are happy. Therefore, seeing the contrary results, I have stopped taking part in materialistic activities. Oh, well, that's good. That's very good. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Yan Maitunadi Prihamedi Sukam Ki Tucham. Man and women both seek sexual enjoyment. And when they are united by the ritualistic ceremony of marriage, they are happy for some time. Yeah, sometime. But finally, there is dissension, and thus there are so many cases of separation and divorce. Although every man and woman is actually eager to enjoy life through sexual unity, the result is disunity and distress. Marriage is recommended to give men and women a concession for restricted sex life, which is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dhamma virudo bhutesu kamosmi. Sex life not against the principles of religion is Krishna. Every living entity is always eager to enjoy sex life because materialistic life consists of eating, sleeping, sex, and fear. In animal life, eating, sleeping, sexual enjoyment, and fear cannot be regarded, but for human society, one second, let me read that again. Every living entity is always eager to enjoy sex life because materialistic life consists of eating, sleeping, sex, and fear. In animal life, eating, sleeping, sexual enjoyment, and fear cannot be regulated. But for human society, the plan is that although men, like animals, must be allowed to eat, sleep, enjoy sex, and take protection from fear, they must be regulated. That's the key word. Regulated. The Vedic plan for eating recommend that one take yajna shista or prasada, food offered to Krishna. Yajna sistan asina santo uchate sarva invasai. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food that is offered first for sacrifice. Bhagavad Gita 3.13. In material life, one commits sinful activities, especially in eating, and because of sinful activities, one is condemned by nature's laws to accept another body, which is imposed as punishment. Sex and eating are essential, and therefore they are offered to human society under Vedic restrictions. Key word restrictions. So that according to the Vedic injunctions, people may eat, sleep, enjoy sex, be protected from fearful life, and gradually be elevated and liberated from the punishment of material existence. Thus, the Vedic injunctions for marriage offer a concession to human society. The idea being that a man and woman united in a ritualistic marriage ceremony should help one another advance in spiritual life. Unfortunately, especially in this age, men and women unite for unrestricted sexual enjoyment. Thus, they are victimized, being obliged to take rebirth in the forms of animals to fulfill their animalistic propensities. The Vedic injunctions therefore warn Nayam deho deha bhajam nirloke kastan kamam arpate vid bhujam ye. One should not enjoy sex life like hogs and eat everything, even to the limit of stool. A human being should eat prasada offered to the deity and should enjoy sex life according to the Vedic injunctions. He should engage himself in the business of Krishna consciousness. He should save himself from the fearful condition of material existence, and he should sleep only to recover from fatigue due to working hard. The learned Brahmana said that since everything is misused by fruitive workers, he had retired from all fruitive activities. Whoa. That's not good. Text 27. The actual form of life for the living entities is one of spiritual happiness, which is real happiness. This happiness can be achieved only when one stops all materialistic activity. Material sense enjoyment is simply imagination. Therefore, considering the subject matter, I have ceased from all material activities and am lying down here. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The difference between the philosophy of the Mayavadis and that of the Vaishnavas is explained herein. Both the Mayavadis and the Vaishnavas know that in materialistic activities there is no happiness. The Mayavadi philosophers, therefore, adhering to the slogan Brahma Satyam Jagan Mitya, want to refrain from false materialistic activities. They want to stop all activities and merge in the Supreme Brahman. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, if one simply ceases from materialistic activity, one cannot remain inactive for very long. And therefore, everyone should engage himself in spiritual activities. There you go. That's the solution. Spiritual activities, which will solve the problem of suffering in this material world. In the Mayavadis, they want to give up activities. They think that by engaging in activities, they will become contaminated. But the Vaishnava will engage in all kinds of activities to please Krishna, not to please themselves. This is something that the Mayavadis have not understood. It is said, therefore, that although the Mayavadi philosophers strive to refrain from materialistic activities and merge in Brahman, and although they may actually merge in the Brahman existence, for want of activity, they fall down again into materialistic life. Arugya Krichena param padam tata patanti adha. Thus, the so-called renouncer, unable to remain in meditation upon Brahman, returns to materialistic activities by opening hospitals and schools and so on. Therefore, simply cultivating knowledge that materialistic activities cannot give one happiness and that one should consequently cease from such activities is insufficient. One should cease from materialistic activities and take up spiritual activities. Okay? In the Mayavadis, they want to give up all activity. In other words, it's like throwing the baby in the bathwater. In other words, instead of just throwing away the bathwater, one throws the baby with the bathwater. Then the solution to the problem will be achieved. Meaning, one should cease from materialistic activities and take up spiritual activities. Then the solution to the problem will be achieved. Anukulyena Krishna Silana. If one does whatever Krishna says, his activities are not material. For example, when Arjuna fought in response to the order of Krishna, his activities were material. His activities were not material. Fighting for sense gratification is a materialistic activity. But fighting by the order of Krishna is spiritual. By spiritual activities, one becomes eligible to go back home, back to God, and then enjoy blissful life eternally. Here in the material world, everything is but a mental concoction that will never give us real happiness. The practical solution, therefore, is to cease from materialistic activities and engage in spiritual activities. Yajnatat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanam. If one works for the sake of pleasing the Supreme Lord, Yagya or Vishnu, one is in liberated life. If one fails to do so, however, he remains in a life of bondage. So our real purpose in life is to be engaged in the service of the Lord and not be concerned with sense gratification and mundane life, but one should be dedicated to serving the Lord with love and devotion. Text 28. In this way, the conditioned soul living within the body forgets his self-interest because he identifies himself with the body. Because the body is material, his natural tendency is to be attracted by the varieties of the material world. Thus, the living entity suffers the miseries of material existence. Yeah, we should not at all be enamored or attached or enticed by mundane activities. Uh, just like going to the uh, mm, uh, going to good baseball games, football games, all kinds of games, gambling, and intoxication, illicit sex, all that stuff we should stay away from. And just be concerned about pleasing Krishna by our devotional service. Purport: everyone is trying to be happy because, as explained in the previous verse, Sukham uh, asya mano rupam swarup. Okay, I'll start over again. Sukham asya mano rupam swarupa par asti aparas tanu. When the living entity is in his original spiritual form, he is happy in nature by nature. There is no question of miseries for the spiritual being. As Krishna, as Krishna is always happy, the living entities who are his parts and parcels are also happy by nature. But because of being put within this material world and forgetting their eternal relationship with Krishna, they have forgotten their real nature. Because every one of us is a part and parcel of Krishna. We have to we have a very affectionate relationship with him. But because we have forgotten our identities and are considering the body to be the self, we are afflicted by all the troubles of birth, death, old age, and disease. This misconception in materialistic life continues unless and until one comes to understand his relationship with Krishna. The happiness sought by the conditioned soul is certainly only illusion, as explained in the next verse. Yeah, you see, there are so many things that are pushing us or enticing us to engage in mundane activities. And because of that, we basically waste our time in the material world having eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and of course, having sex, and avoid actually making spiritual progress. We simply continue living like animals rather than as real, uh, genuine devotees of the Lord. Such a life is meant for animals, not for devotees. Okay, 1 second. Let me just take care of this. Okay. Oh, text number 29. Our time is not over yet. Right?
Yeah, we have some time.
Yeah. Text 29. Just as a deer, because of ignorance, cannot see the water within a well covered by grass, but runs after water elsewhere. The living entity covered by the material body does not see the happiness within himself, but runs after happiness in the material world. That's a very profound statement. Purport. This is an accurate example depicting how the living entity, because of lack of knowledge, runs after happiness outside his own self. When one understands his real identity as a spiritual being, he can understand the supreme spiritual being, Krishna, and the rest and the real happiness exchange between Krishna and oneself. It is very interesting to note how this verse points to the body's growth from the spirit soul. The modern materialistic scientist thinks that life grows from matter, but actually the fact is that matter grows from life. The life or spiritual soul is compared herein to water, from which clumps of matter grow in the form of grass. One who is ignorant of scientific knowledge of the spirit soul does not look inside the body to find happiness in the soul. Instead, he goes outside to search for happiness, just as a deer, without knowledge of the water beneath the grass, goes out to the desert to find water. The Krishna consciousness movement is trying to remove the ignorance of misled human beings who are trying to find water outside the jurisdiction of life. Rasovai Saha, Rasaham Apsukonteya. The taste of water is Krishna. To quench one's thirst, one must taste water by association with Krishna. This is the Vedic injunction. Text 30. The living entity tries to achieve happiness and rid himself of the causes of distress. But because the various bodies of the living entities are under the full control of material nature, all his plans in different bodies, one after another, are ultimately baffled. In other words, baffled, confused, never really achieves its goal. Purport. Because the materialist is in gross ignorance of how the laws of material nature act upon him, as a result of his fruitive activity, he mistakenly plans to enjoy bodily comfort in the human form of life through so-called economic development, through pious activities for elevation to the higher planetary systems, and in many other ways, but factually he becomes a victim of the reactions of his fruitive activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the Supersoul within the cores of the heart, of the hearts of all living entities. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivisto matak smriti jnanam apahanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The desires and activities of the living being are observed by the Supersoul, who is the Upadrasta, the overseer, and who orders material nature to fulfill the various desires of the living being, as clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam heard they say virginitistati, Ramayan Sarvabhutani, Yantra Rudrani Mayaya. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and as one desires, the Lord gives one various types of bodies, which are like machines. Riding on such a machine, the living entity wanders throughout the universe under the control of material nature and its modes. Thus, the material being is not at all free to act, but is fully under the control of material nature, which is fully under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As soon as the living entity is victimized by material desires to lord it over material nature, he is subjected to the control of material nature, which is supervised by the Supreme Soul. The result is that one again and again makes plans and is baffled, but as foolish as he is, he cannot see the cause of his bafflement. This cause, distinctly stated in Bhagavad Gita, because one has not surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he must work under the control of material nature and its stringent laws. Davihi esa gunamayi mamamaya durataya. The only means of becoming free from this entanglement is to surrender to the Supreme Lord. In the human form of life, the living entity must accept this instruction from the Supreme Lord, from the Supreme Person. Krishna Sarva, Krishna Sarva Dharma Priyaja Mamikam Saranandaja. Do not plan to achieve happiness and drive away distress. You will never be successful. Simply surrender unto me. End of quote. Unfortunately, however, the living entity does not accept the Supreme Lord's clearly stated instructions from Bhagavad Gita, and thus he becomes a perpetual captive of the laws of material nature. Well, that's not good at all. Yajnata karmano natra lokoyam karma bandhana. If one does not act for the satisfaction of Krishna, who is known as Vishnu or Yogya, he must be entangled in the reactions of fruitive, reactions of fruitive activities. These reactions are called papa and punya, sinful and pious. By pious activities, one is elevated to the higher planetary systems, and by impious activities, one is degraded to the lower species of life, in which he is punished by the laws of nature. In the lower species of life, there is an evolutionary process, and when the term of the living entity in living entities' imprisonment or punishment in the lower species is finished, he is again offered a human form and given a chance to decide for himself which way he should plan. If he again misses the opportunity, he is again put into the cycle of birth and death, going sometimes higher and sometimes lower, turning on the samsara chakra. the wheel of material existence. As a wheel sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down, the stringent laws of material nature make the living entity in material nature. Let me read this again. As a wheel sometimes goes up and sometimes comes down, the stringent laws of material nature make the living entity in material existence sometimes happy and sometimes distressed. How he suffers in the cycle of happiness and distress is described in the next one, text 31. And we'll end with this text 31. Materialistic activities are always mixed with three kinds of miserable conditions: adhyatmika, adidaivika, and adibodhika. Therefore, even if one achieves some success by performing such activities, what is the benefit of this success? One is still subjected to birth, death, old age, and disease, and the reactions of his fruitive activities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to the materialistic way of life, if a poor man, after laboring very, very hard, gets some material profit at the end of his life, he is considered a success, even though he again dies while suffering the threefold miseries: adhyatmika, adidaivika, and adibodhika. No one can escape the threefold miseries of materialistic life, namely miseries pertaining to the body and mind, miseries pertaining to the difficulties imposed by societal, sorry, by society, community, nation, and other living entities, and miseries inflicted upon us by natural disturbances from earthquakes, famines, droughts, floods, epidemics, and so on. If one works very hard, suffering the threefold miseries, and then is successful in getting some small benefit, what is the value of his benefit? Besides that, even if a karmi is successful in accumulating some material wealth, he still cannot enjoy it, for he must die in bereavement. I have seen a dying man begging a material attendant to increase his life for 4 years more, okay, so that he could complete his material plans. Of course, the medical man was unsuccessful in expanding the life of the man, who therefore died in great bereavement. Everyone must die in this way, and after one's mental condition, and after one's mental condition is taken into account by the laws of nature, he is given another chance to fulfill his desires in a different body. Material plans for the material body have the value, have no value, but under the spell of the illusory energy, we consider them extremely valuable. There were many politicians, social reformers, and philosophers who died very miserably without deriving any practical value from their material plans. Therefore, a sane and sensible man never desires to work hard and undergo the conditions of threefold miseries, only to die in disappointment. Wow, that's terrible. Very, very bad. Text 32. The Brahmanas continued, I am actually seeing how a rich man who is a victim of his senses is very greedy to accumulate wealth and therefore suffers from insomnia, in other words, not being able to sleep, due to fear from all sides, despite his wealth and opulence. Purport by Srila Prabhupada, and we'll end with this purport. Greedy capitalists accumulate wealth under so many miserable conditions. The result being that because they collect money by questionable means, their minds are always agitated. Thus, they are unable to sleep at night, and they have to take pills for mental tranquility to invite sleep. And sometimes even the pills are a failure. Consequently, the result of having accumulated money by so much labor is certainly not happiness, but only distress. What is the value of acquiring a comfortable position if one's mind is always disturbed? Narottam Dasa Thakura has therefore sung, Samsara Visalnare Dibanisi Iyajwale Judaitana Kainu Upaya. I am suffering from the poisonous effect of material enjoyment. Thus, my heart is always burning and is almost on the verge of failure. The results of the greedy capitalist's unnecessary accumulation of wealth is that he must suffer from a blazing fire of anxiety and always be concerned with how to save his money and invest it properly to get more and more and more. Okay. Such life is certainly not very happy, but because the spell of the illusory energy, materialistic persons engage in such activities. As far as our Krishna consciousness movement is concerned, we are getting money naturally by the grace of God by selling our literature. This literature is not sold for our sense gratification. To spread the Krishna consciousness movement, we need so many things, and Krishna is therefore supplying us the requisite money to advance this mission. The mission of Krishna is to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, and for this purposes, we naturally must have sufficient money. Therefore, according to the advance of Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, we should not give up attachment to money that can spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Srila Rupa Goswami says in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, sorry. Srila Rupa Goswami said in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.256. Prapan Chikataya Budhya Hari Sambandhi Vastuna Mumukshubhi Paripyago Vairagyam Phagu Katyate. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things which are related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, though they are material, this is called incomplete renunciation. Money that can help in spreading the Krishna consciousness movement is not a part of the material world, and we should not give it up thinking that it is material. Srila Rupa Goswami advises, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjata Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Uchyate. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.255. Money is undoubtedly coming in great quantities, but we should not be attached to this money for sense gratification. Every cent should be spent for spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Here it is. Every cent should be spent for the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement, not for sense gratification. There is danger for a preacher when he receives great quantities of money, for as soon as he spends even a single cent of the collection for his personal sense gratification, he becomes a fallen victim. The preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement should be extremely careful not to misuse the immense quantities of money needed to spread this movement. Let us not make this money the cause of our distress. It should be used for Krishna, and that will cause our eternal happiness. Money is Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune, the companion of Narayana. Later, let us not make this money the cause of our distress. It should be used for Krishna, and that will cause our eternal happiness. Money is Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune, the companion of Narayana. Lakshmi must always remain with Narayana, and then there need be no fear of degradation. Okay, I think we'll stop right there, my dear devotees. We're stopping on Canto 7, Chapter 13, and text 33. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? Anyone would like to ask? Any questions or comments? Okay, if there are no questions or comments, we will end our seance for today and pick it up again tonight. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Bhagavan.